Did you know that 8 out of 9 Hashiras watched at least one of their loved ones die? Now, I'm not saying having a trauma-inducing backstory is a requirement to becoming a Hashira, but there is a visible pattern. That said, here's every Hashira's tragic past explained. Gyomei Himejima, the Stone Hashira. Gyomei is considered the strongest Hashira by many. However, behind that strength is a painful past. For starters, Gyomei was born blind, making his feat as a pillar of strength in the Hashiras all the more impressive. But that's not all. Gyomei lived most of his life in a temple with 9 orphan children, and despite living a poor life, he was happy and content with taking care of the orphans as if they were his own flesh and blood. Since the temple was located in a demon-prone area, Gyomei had to light the wisteria incense to fend off the demons every night, and for a while, this was enough to ensure everyone's safety. That is, until one tragic night. One of the 9 orphans decided to go beyond the grounds, disobeying Gyomei's strict rule forbidding them from doing so. As a result, misfortune struck, and the child encountered a demon. In an attempt to bargain for his life, the child gave up the temple's location and put out the wisteria incense. This allowed the demon to invade the temple, killing 4 of the orphans instantly. The rest of the children tried to escape, but they quickly met their demise, except for one girl, named Sayo, who Gyomei swore he'd protect with his life. Upon meeting the demon, Gyomei was able to tap into an innate strength driven by his desire to protect the last remaining orphan. With all of his hatred, Gyomei pounded the demon's head until the sun rose, leaving the demon with literally nothing but ashes. But we're just getting started as we move on to the Insect Hashira's revenge-driven past. Shinobu Kocho, the Insect Hashira. Shinobu, also known as the Insect Hashira, is also no stranger to tragic backstories. Yes, she may have a pretty face and calm demeanor, but beneath that is a deep-rooted hatred for demons. I mean, who could blame her? She lost not only both her parents to demons, but also her older sister Kanai later on. At a young age, Shinobu and Kanai witnessed the deaths of their parents right before their eyes. The trauma resulted in both of them joining and training with the Demon Slayer Corps. Don't get me wrong, they were both strong in their own right. However, fate has other plans for Shinobu, as Kanai gets fatally wounded in the line of duty. Surprisingly, Kanai was still somewhat sympathetic towards demons, despite what happened to their parents, and she wanted Shinobu to feel the same way. But having witnessed your parents and your older sister get killed by demons, that was her last straw. Speaking of burning passion, our next tragic past involves the Flame Hashira, Kyojuro Rengoku, who also knows a thing or two about loss and suffering. Kyojuro Rengoku, the Flame Hashira. Rengoku's family has a historical reputation for producing the finest Flame Hashiras. However, his father and former Flame Hashira, Shinjiro, had always struggled with his self-confidence issues, thinking he'll never amount to the Sun Breath. Shinjiro fell into despair and retired from his duties. To make things worse, Rengoku's mom got sick with an incurable disease right after giving birth to his younger brother, Senjuro. This series of events pushed Shinjiro further into depression and alcoholism, ultimately neglecting his father duties to both Rengoku and Senjuro. Despite all this, Rengoku tried to be strong and positive for his family, and with that same drive, he was able to prove his worth and receive the title of the new Flame Hashira. Like any other son trying to gain their father's approval, Rengoku longed to hear his father say how proud he was of him. Unfortunately, Shinjiro barely showed any care, and even told Rengoku that it didn't matter. But Rengoku's passion never wavered, and he never blamed his father for anything. He never grew any hatred towards Shinjiro despite him not being the father they needed the most, especially after the loss of their mother. Up until Rengoku's final breath, all he ever wanted was to make both his parents proud of what he had become. The death of a parent, combined with deeply rooted family issues, is always tough to handle. And if you agree on how tragic Rengoku's past was, we've got more coming with Obanai, the Snake Hashira. Obanai Iguro, the Snake Hashira. Not to compare or compete on which family situation was worse, but Obanai's childhood was very far from desirable. In a world where demons terrorized humanity, poor Obanai was born into a family that worshipped one, namely the Serpent Demon, a literal snake demon. So much so that they strictly followed every command and even resorted to sacrificing children to the monster. And yes, Obanai himself was no exception. I mean, could you imagine your own family locking you up at the mercy of a disgusting demon who has had zero good intentions for anyone? Nothing about his childhood resembled anything close to peace, warmth, and comfort. He spent most of his youth in a cage, deprived of the little joys a child should have. And one fateful day, the serpent demon favored Obanai and ordered her followers to cut his mouth up to resemble a snake. Emotional abuse from his family, plus the physical torment given by the serpent demon? That's more than enough to drive anyone, let alone a child, insane. And if you ever wondered why he keeps wearing that white bandage on his face, now you know. Not long after the continuous torment, Obanai plotted his escape, in which he succeeded with the help of the flame Hashira at the time, Shinjuro. Surely escaping was enough to lift a few weights off of Obanai's shoulders, right? Not quite. After the demon found out that she had lost her favorite torture patient, she went full berserk. As a result, Obanai's entire family was brutally murdered. If you were to ask what fuels Obanai's passion as a demon slayer, it's the collective trauma, pain, and guilt he has gone through. It's like the world deprived him of what it's like to be loved by your family. Speaking of love, Mitsuri, the love Hashira, is our next topic for tragic backstories. Mitsuri Kanroji, the love Hashira. In contrast to the rest of the Hashiras, Mitsuri wasn't exposed to a direct loss in the family or loved ones. But to those who can relate to having low self-esteem, being pressured by societal expectations, or even having body dissatisfaction, Mitsuri's story hits right at home. Mitsuri was born with a unique body composition, making her physically bigger and stronger than a normal child. To compensate for her distinct anatomy, she developed a large appetite, equivalent to that of 3 sumo wrestlers at a young age. On top of that, her hair turned pink, which was seen as an unnatural color by many, due to eating plenty of sakura mochi. These issues with physical appearance make it difficult for her to get along and fit in with other girls, as she was often seen as a freak. As a child, making friends and feeling like you belonged was a necessity, and Mitsuri had to suppress a lot of who she truly was to get even the slightest bit of acceptance from others. Therefore, she hid her strength, changed her hair color to black, and forced herself to eat like a normal girl to fit in. Not long after these adjustments, a potential partner approached her, though it didn't end well, as he left her after a while. Mitsuri also figured it may not turn out well for her too, if she had lived a lie just to gain a husband. Luckily, meeting Kaguya Ubuyashiki, the 95th leader of the Demon Slayer Corps, was the encounter she needed to overcome her insecurities. Tengen Uzui, the Sound Hashira. Tengen Uzui was born into a family of shinobi, along with 8 other siblings, but as fate would have it, their training was more cruel and painstaking than your average shinobi. Apart from their early exposure to harsh training, their father forced them to engage in 1v1 duels with blindfolds. Yes, they wouldn't even know who it is they're beating up. And the worst part? It's a battle to the death. As a result, Tengen unknowingly killed 2 of his own brothers through this sadistic ordeal. And by the time he was 15, 7 of his siblings had already died in the same manner. The extreme conditions their father subjected them to were supposedly an attempt to save the shinobi clan by plucking out the weak, leaving only the strongest. But if that's not enough for Father of the Year, he also forced them to think that killing the innocent is necessary for their benefit, and that having a wife is only for producing offspring. Sadly, Tengen's only remaining brother adopted their father's mindset. However, since Tengen could never accept such a way of thinking, he finally decided to leave his village and the clan. For a while, he'd ponder about annihilating the Uzui clan, but he couldn't bring himself to kill his own brother and father. Eventually, his path to becoming the Sound Hashira helped him abandon the darkness of his past. Giyu Tomioka, the Water Hashira. Behind the stern face of the Water Hashira, Giyu is a tragic past that almost destroyed his mental state. And yes, like many other characters in the series, he was an orphan at a young age due to his family being killed by demons. But at the very least, he wasn't completely alone since he had his older sister, Sutako. Keyword, had. Giyu's sister was eventually taken from him as well. To protect Giyu from the demons, Sutako sacrificed herself, sending Giyu into further despair. Despite his attempts to tell everyone that a demon killed his sister, no one seemed to take him seriously. And to add salt into the wounds, everyone just started to think that he was crazy and mentally ill. This resulted in him being sent to a faraway relative. In the journey, Giyu decides to escape and almost dies until a hunter named Sakonji Urokodaki rescues him. Not long after, Giyu became his apprentice, allowing him to meet Sabito, who became a dear friend and comrade. One day, he goes and expresses his desire to die, likely due to the guilt he feels from his sister's sacrifice. In response, Sabito angrily strikes him on the cheek while threatening to stop being his friend. He also exclaimed that his sister's sacrifice would have meant nothing if Giyu had given up his life. These words were enough to shake Giyu to his core and push forward, as they took the final selection together. However, Giyu was injured by the first demon he encountered, and Sabito had to save him. Giyu was then entrusted to another boy by Sabito, as he carried on battling the other demons. Unable to help his friend, Giyu regained consciousness after a week, with the tragic news of Sabito being the only one who died after nearly killing every demon. The guilt and distress deeply scarred Giyu, sending him into an emotional breakdown. The loss of his sister and best friend is the reason why he hates himself and doubts his worthiness as a Hashira. Muichiro Tokito, the Miss Hashira. Next up, we have Muichiro Tokito, the Miss Hashira, who definitely knows way too much about loss. He was born to two kind and loving parents who wanted nothing but to provide security for their family. But one stormy night, Mui's mother got sick, and his father went out to look for herbs. Unfortunately, his father couldn't make it back as he fell off a cliff due to the harsh storm and died. On the other end, unable to receive the aid she needed, his mother also passed shortly. All that was left was Mui's twin brother, Yuichiro, who had a negative outlook on life. His personality completely contrasted with Mui's, as he was known to be optimistic. However, that doesn't mean Mui was immune to his brother's spiteful and degrading behavior. As if living together without their parents wasn't enough, Yuichiro had to be taken from Mui as well. One day, a demon was able to enter their house. And despite Yuichiro being who he is, he sacrificed himself to save Mui. This sent Mui into a full berserk, as he killed the demon with a variety of weapons he could get his hands on. By the time he made his way back home, Yuichiro was already at the brink of death, and with his final breath, he uttered, "Please save him, he's not like me. He's a kind-hearted kid." Not gut-wrenching enough? Let's reveal the backstory of our final Hashira in this list, Sanemi. Sanemi Shinazugawa, the Wind Hashira. Sanemi, the Wind Hashira, lived under harsh conditions brought about by his abusive father. All of his siblings were always the subject to their father's violence. Now, despite Sanemi's mom having a small build, she never failed to protect them from the beatings. With their father having such a notorious attitude, he eventually met his demise when he was stabbed to death due to the people's resentment. And while the loss of a father will always be painful, this gave Sanemi's family a sigh of relief since they were finally free from the violence. Sadly, things don't always end up for the better. One night, their mother was still out late, leaving the siblings at home alone. Noticing the uncharacteristic circumstance, Sanemi and his little brother Genya couldn't sleep, worrying about their mom's absence. Sanemi went out to look for her, while Genya watched over their siblings. Despite Genya's warnings, his little brothers and sisters went running for the door as they heard a loud knock. In an instant, 4 of them got clawed to death as a demon breaks through the door. Genya, holding one of his little brothers who also got killed, gets away with a scar on his face. Before the demon could land a fatal blow to Genya, Sanemi tackled the demon away and told his brother to make a run for it. Unable to fully compose himself, Genya runs outside trying to seek aid for the wounds of his siblings. Instead, he comes across Sanemi standing before their mother's corpse. Turns out it was their mother who turned into a demon and attacked them. But the ungodly sight clouded Genya's judgment as he shouted murderer at his own brother who saved his life. Now, with all the Hashira's traumatic backstories told, who do you think had the most tragic one?